Hey there, and welcome. If your business stores any kind of oil, and I mean any kind, from diesel fuel all the way to vegetable oil, you've probably had to think about EPA regulations. Well, today, we're going to tackle a big one, the SPCC Plan. We are going to break down exactly what it is and help you figure out if your business actually needs one.
So, let's just start with the most direct question you can ask yourself. When you look around your facility, your storage tanks, your equipment, could an oil spill, big or small, realistically happen here? It's a really serious question because the consequences, both for the environment and for your wallet, are huge.
And that, right there, is the whole reason this regulation exists. Spills can be absolutely devastating to local ecosystems and, frankly, incredibly expensive for a business to clean up. So the EPA created a framework specifically to prevent this, which brings us to the SPCC Plan.
So what is this thing? Well, the full name is the Spill Prevention, Control, and Countermeasure Plan. But let's be real, everyone just calls it the SPCC Plan. So let's dig into what that actually means for you.
The key thing to latch onto here is the word prevention. This plan isn't just about what you do after a spill happens. It's a super detailed written game plan that outlines exactly how your facility is going to stop spills from ever happening in the first place. It's all about being proactive. Yeah, so think of it as having two main jobs. Job number one is all about prevention, doing things like using the right containment systems and making sure your staff is properly trained. But it's also your emergency playbook, making sure you are totally prepared to respond effectively and minimize the damage if something does go wrong.
And let's be clear, this is not a DIY project. This isn't some form you can just download and fill out over a cup of coffee. The EPA requires a high level of expertise, which means a professional engineer has to certify that your plan meets all the complex federal regulations. It's a big deal.
Okay, so, the big question. How do you know if this whole thing even applies to you? Well, it really boils down to four key questions. Let's walk through them together. If you answer yes to all four of these, then, spoiler alert, you're almost certainly going to need an SPCC plan.
First up, is your facility a fixed location? We're talking about things like factories, farms, auto shops, or maintenance yards. This rule doesn't apply to things that move, like tanker trucks or barges, because they fall under a completely different set of regulations.
Second, do you use or store oil? And you might be surprised here because the EPA's definition of oil is incredibly broad. It's not just crude oil or petroleum. It includes everything from gasoline and hydraulic fluid to crop oils, vegetable oils, and even animal fats.
Question 3 is all about potential. Could a spill from your site reasonably find its way into U.S. waters? And waters doesn't just mean a major river or a lake. It also includes the streams, ditches, and even storm drains that eventually feed into those larger bodies of water. And finally, we get to the numbers. If you answered yes to those first 3 questions, it all comes down to your total storage capacity. The EPA has set some very specific thresholds you need to know about.
Okay, here are the magic numbers. For your above-ground storage, the trigger is a total capacity of more than 1,320 gallons. But, and this is a really crucial detail, you only count the containers that are 55 gallons or larger. For any tanks that are completely buried underground, the threshold is way higher, more than 42,000 gallons.
All right, so I know those 4 questions can feel a little abstract. So let's bring this into the real world. We're going to look at some examples, and you might be surprised by just how many different types of businesses are covered by this.
You know, in the industrial sector, it's not just the obvious places like oil refineries. A metal fabrication shop that uses a lot of hydraulic oils, or even a food processing plant that uses huge amounts of vegetable oil, can easily meet that threshold.
Agriculture is another huge one. Think about it. A farm with a couple of large diesel tanks for its tractors can easily blow past that 1,320-gallon limit for above-ground storage. The same thing goes for big co-ops and feed mills.
And it even stretches to facilities you might never think of. A hospital, for example, with big diesel tanks for its backup generators. An auto repair shop with bulk oil storage. Or even your local city's maintenance yard, where they fuel up all the municipal vehicles.
Now, it's really important to understand that creating an SPCC plan is not a one-and-done task. The EPA considers this a living document. It has to grow and change right along with your facility to stay effective and, of course, to keep you compliant. So there are 2 critical deadlines you've got to burn into your memory. First, if you make a major change, like you add a brand new tank, you have 6 months to update your plan. And then, no matter what, you have to do a full review and get the plan recertified every 5 years. So where does this super important document live? Right there, at your facility. You don't mail it in or file it with the EPA. It has to be kept on site, where it's easy to grab in an emergency and ready to show an inspector if they ever stop by. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here. We've defined what the plan is, we walked through the 4 questions, we looked at some real-world examples, so now let's turn all this information into a simple, actionable path forward for you.
Here is your 3-step action plan. Super simple. Step 1. Do the math. Tally up your total storage capacity. And don't forget that 55-gallon rule for your above-ground tanks. Step 2. Formally go through those 4 key questions we covered. And Step 3. Based on those answers, you can make a final, clear decision about what your facility needs to do.
And that really brings us to the final, and honestly, the most important question of all. Based on everything we've just talked about, take a good, hard look at your operations and ask yourself, is my facility compliant? Getting that answer right is absolutely critical, not just to avoid fines, but to protect your business and the environment we all share. Thanks so much for watching.